The SCP Foundation is full of dangerous anomalies, and the agency is dedicated to protecting us from them. However, not all SCPs are dangerous or threatening, and some entries are so ridiculous to the point when they become laughable. So in this video, we will explore the funniest, most ridiculous SCPs. But before we do, make sure to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, and we will be exploring more interesting topics like this one in the future. Number 5. SCP-1370 Object Class Safe. SCP-1370 is a self-aware artificial being constructed from various electrical devices and tools. It stands approximately 1 meter in height and is capable of moving its limbs despite not having any power source. However, its design appears to give more importance to aesthetic concern rather than function, and due to a poor center of gravity, 1370 is unable to balance and walk. The robot's head is a voltmeter soldered upside down, something which makes SCP-1370 appear as if it is smiling, and the robot communicates in a monotone voice via a loudspeaker mounted on its chest. Also, 1370 is capable of observing its environment because the bot reacts to visual and audible stimuli. The machine is very intelligent because it can speak fluent English, French, and Latin, and is capable of learning new languages. However, SCP-1370 rarely converses with humans, as it is very hostile and engages combat with any sentient being it encounters. 1370 calls itself Doombot 2000, Robo-Lord the Destructor, Prime Minister Sinister, and Dartclaw Flex, and constantly comes up with new obnoxious names. As we already said, the robot is very clumsy, but despite of this, SCP-1370 often makes threats and has stated that it's determined to destroy every living being it sees. All shall be trampled beneath my feet. All souls will burn. Identify yourself so that I may sign damnation upon you as you expire. Many tests on SCP-1370's combat powers have been conducted, but every single one confirmed that 1370 lacks the physical aptitude to cause damage to any living being, as it usually falls over while attacking, unable to stand up again. As we all know, there are many SCPs in the Foundation whose sole purpose in life is to eliminate humanity. However, we can at least rest assured that one of them, SCP-1370, is so powerless that it becomes funny. Number 4. SCP-1296 Object Class Euclid. SCP-1296 is a Volga M24 car which carries the contact information of a company called Dial Alama. The vehicle itself displays minor physical alterations, but in general appears to be normal. Instead, 1296's anomalous traits become apparent when you call Dial Alama's phone number. Upon calling, you are put in contact with a salesman who will then attempt to sell you a llama. Also, these sellers are very direct, but they do not employ any mimetic effects while trying to convince you. Instead, they just cut to the chase. You need a llama. Dial a llama gets you a llama. Anytime, any place. Like, you call us, you order a llama, we get you a llama. And as expected, if you say something which isn't about their products, SCP-1296 becomes very dismissive and often hangs up after saying, "This isn't the 20 questions hotline, this is the 2 questions hotline. Question 1, do you want a llama? Question 2, what kind of a llama do you want?" Also, this company is very determined to deliver, and they do not care about your location. You order llamas, we get you llamas. From the top of Mount Everest to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, if you need a llama, we will get you that llama. Also, Dial Alama's prices are all over the place and have ranged from over $4,000 to just $17. But regardless of the price, Dial Alama's delivery is insanely fast, and SCP-1296 will appear within 2 hours at the caller's location. And unfortunately, all attempts to track the car after delivery have failed because GPS devices attached to the vehicle cease function, and the car somehow always evades pursuit. Also, not only is Dial a llama's price range inconsistent, but their fulfillment rate is also random. On one occasion, an alpaca was ordered, but instead, a llama with an alpaca hide glued onto it was delivered, and during a different test, a robotic llama was ordered, but this time, the company actually delivered what was promised. Most notably, however, on one occasion, SCP-1545 was ordered, which is an anomalous llama costume. The price was 0, and immediately after the order, 1545 vanished from its containment chamber, and SCP-1296's delivery car appeared 15 seconds later. But this time, the product wasn't delivered as usual, but was instead chucked from the roof by a representative, screaming, "Just take it." So, as we see, 1296 is neither harmful nor helpful. Instead, it's totally useless and so absurd to the point when it becomes laughable. Number 3. SCP-066 Object Class Euclid Impetus. SCP-066 is an amorphous mass of braided yarn and ribbon weighing approximately 1 kilogram, which possesses many anomalous properties. To begin with, when individual strands of 066 are manipulated, a musical note is produced by the object. Also, 066 is capable of changing its shape and materializing physical objects. And finally, when a set of 6 or more notes is played, SCP-066 will produce a random effect. For example, on one occasion, after a set of notes were played, 066 transformed into a small kitten, which was very friendly and playful, before 066 returned to its usual form a bit later. In a different test, SCP-066 began playing a song, which lasted 4 minutes. However, the song's lyrics were odd because they warned the listener not to use sharp objects without supervision. And finally, on one occasion, after 066 was interacted with, a small cupcake appeared from within 066's body. And to top things off, before the cupcake appeared, SCP-066 played the Happy Birthday song. So, as we see, 066 used to be a very friendly and wholesome creature. And we say used to because after a specific test, its behavior changed for the worse. The Foundation wanted to study SCP-066's materials, so they instructed a D-Class to remove a portion of its body using scissors. However, when he began to cut, SCP-066 rolled away from him and made an unidentified squeaking sound. The D-Class tried to cut once more, and as expected, 066 rolled away, but this time produced the phrase, "Are you Eric?" And after the prisoner said no, SCP-066 slowly began to turn red. A large amount of eyeballs began to grow from in between 066's strands, and tentacles began to emerge from its body. SCP-066 then began to emit loud sounds until the D-Class escaped the room. And ever since this incident, the creature hasn't returned to its previous friendly form. Instead, every time 066 is approached by a human, it will ask them, "Are you Eric?" and then play Beethoven's Second Symphony at over 140 decibels, something which usually causes permanent hearing damage. Also, the new SCP-066 can move very quickly using its tentacles, and when in containment, the creature slowly destroys its containment chamber using these appendages. So, as we see, 066 used to be very friendly, and the scissors experiment apparently upset the creature and made it hostile. Nonetheless, a ball of yarn which asks you if you're Eric and plays Beethoven's symphony certainly sounds quite funny and ridiculous. Number 2. SCP-2557 Object Class Keter. SCP-2557 is a possession of Envelope Logistics, an investment company which is the leading buyer and seller for abstract concepts in the Tri-Universe region. 2557 was purchased from a Foundation employee in late 2011 and is one of the many locations throughout the known universe where one can get started trading with envelope logistics. However, this isn't any ordinary investment company, because with envelope logistics you don't invest in stocks, indexes, and bonds, but rather in abstract concepts. And in order to explain just how abstract and diverse their services are, Envelope Logistics says that their portfolio is as diverse as the dreams of 33-year-old residents of the bailiwick of Guernsey. The effectiveness of the new HR policies employed by the DuPont company and gender dysphoria. Before the year 1997, abstractions in the universe were supposedly heavily regulated, which didn't allow for such investments. However, since the privatization during the 1997 Divinetic outing, Envelope Logistics has been a leader in the innovative new ownership industries of the future. And finally, we come to the funniest part of SCP-2557, namely examples of past investments. A woman in New York invested in the concept of Tony Blair's political career in 1984 when he was just a member of parliament. But the advice from an Envelope Logistics employee didn't disappoint, and his ascent to the prime ministership has paid her dividends ever since. Even more bizarre is the investment of a man who, with the help of an Envelope Logistics advisor, found an opportunity to invest in the cancer rates in Selkirk, Manitoba for an absolute bargain. This initial investment then helped him amount a so-called World Health portfolio, presumably an array of investments in disease rates, which let him quit his job and pursue his passions full-time. But as we said, SCP-2557 was purchased from a Foundation employee in 2011, so this anomaly can no longer be contained by the SCP Foundation, as it is now property of Envelope Logistics. This means that nothing is stopping you from visiting their website and opening an account in a matter of minutes. So if you feel like trying your luck, nothing is stopping you from signing up and investing in abstractions. For example, the number of people 682 will terminate next year. Number 1. SCP-1233 Object Class Keter. SCP-1233 is a humanoid entity which appears to be an individual wearing a spacesuit equipped with a jetpack. However, interacting with this entity soon reveals that this isn't an ordinary astronaut. 1233 calls itself Moon Champion, Defender of Space Justice and Destroyer of Evil, and states that it has come to our planet to learn more about our culture and to seek aid for his people in their ongoing war against the Moon Monsters. SCP-1233 has also stated that the Moon Monsters have plagued his people for countless millennia, and that it is his sacred duty as Moon Champion to meet these nightmarish beasts in combat and lead the Moon people in their defense of the majestic Moon Kingdom. 1233 occasionally visits Earth by falling from the sky and crashing, causing an impact crater. It will then climb out and travel towards the nearest town. On its way, SCP-1233 will frequently stop to engage in various activities, such as chasing small insects, attempting to interrogate animals, trying to eat by pushing food items against its visor, and marching into bodies of water. Upon reaching the town, SCP-1233 will engage in activities which, due to its curiosity, appearance, physical abilities, and lack of understanding of human society, usually results in chaos and destruction. And this isn't helped by the fact that 1233 is extremely powerful and has survived small arms fire, landmines, and even anti-tank munitions, something which makes SCP-1233's destructive sprees near impossible to stop. For example, this entity often breaks into stores to inspect the wares, challenges inanimate objects to combat, stacks cars on top of one another, and on On one occasion, 1233 even collected dogs and tried to use them as currency to purchase more dogs. Also, this entity communicates using a loudspeaker and does so in a loud, declamatory male voice, often asking questions that would apparently help it combat the moon monsters. And finally, SCP-1233 has insisted that humans need to answer the Moon King's call and assist them in their desperate battle against the moon monsters. Of course, where this so-called Moon Kingdom is located and what the fate of the Moon people is entirely unknown. One thing is certain, however, SCP-1233 behaves in a very unusual way, and observing this entity as it explores and destroys a city would certainly be hilarious. So which one of these SCPs was the funniest and most ridiculous, and what should we explore in our next video? Let us know in the comments. Please leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos.